It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590 to talk to the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz, Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And as we were fumbling there for the music key, the thought in my mind was, from the Treasure Coast Live, it's Friday morning.
That's it.
Right?
It's live.
It's live. Yeah. Makes me think of some of the pranks that we used. Never mind.
That too.
Yeah. The days of college radio for me. Way back when.
Oh, yeah.
And
well, we had a student station at Loyola, and it was an AM station, and that was raucous. I mean, everybody there, even the general manager, was a student.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We were the same at Ursinus College, where I went to school, and it was WRUC 89.5 FM in stereo.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you guys had...
We had an FM, probably a watt, but
Oh, okay, I got you. So
it was
just
a small
on
station.
campus, just on campus.
Yeah, mostly. I mean,
Yeah.
you could get it at the gas station right across from the campus.
Yeah,
but
yes.
I'm not sure it went a whole lot farther. It was supposed to hit the dorms. I'm trying to remember when I lived, the first year I was there, I actually did not live on the main dorms, which were the freshman dorms, which was interesting. But I actually liked being on campus, partially because of my being on the VCR crew, to speak of other ancient technology.
I'm sorry, I'm not old enough to remember
Yeah,
that.
right. Sure you're not. Sure you're not. My Volvo and I went all over that. I was the only student vehicle that I knew of that was allowed to drive anywhere and everywhere, except probably I probably would have gotten yelled at if I'd driven over the football field. But
Question about the dorms.
okay,
When you were a freshman,
yeah.
was it mandatory that you stay in the dorms?
No, there were students who commuted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were
Okay.
people who lived close enough. And by the time that I transferred into Ursinus, and by the time that I got there weren't any rooms available in the student dorm. And I lived in 942 something or other, whatever the main drag was, State Street, I think, that ran through town. And it was a home that had been converted into dorms. And I lived up on the third floor. So
Cool.
yeah, third floor walk up.
There you go. Yay. That
And,
works.
Yeah. And we won't talk about students who shimmied down trees or up trees, and never mind.
Well, I think of every once in a while when I think of QCS, the FM side of KXLU was a classical music station.
Yeah.
And that was for seniors only.
Ooh. Okay.
And paid
Well,
staff.
you had wow, and you had obviously more students. Ursinus didn't have that many.
Well, not really. We only had about 30 or 40 students in broadcasting at that time at Loyola.
Yeah, we were a much smaller crowd.
You were smaller than that?
Yeah, we were. Much smaller than
Whoa,
that.
my goodness. I thought
So,
we were
no.
tiny.
We
Wow.
were tiny, and it was actually kind of interesting. I was coming up the ranks in the radio station and being groomed to be the manager in my senior year for it, and the guy who was en route to become the editor-in-chief of the newspaper picked up an Edinburgh scholarship, and so he hightailed it out in his senior year, obviously to take it at Edinburgh. And that left a vacuum, and they actually tapped me. And that was a most interesting, and I became the editor. I had the media of the campus, so I became the editor-in-chief of the newspaper as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, the Ursinus Weekly Reader. And
Yeah.
and for one of our
How much was it?
how much was it?
Yeah, was it free to the students?
Yeah, it was free to the students.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we went to bed Monday night. Back in the old days, we went to bed Monday night. Tuesday we went in and set the headlines. Once the paper was laid out, Wednesday we proofed it, and Thursday it came out to the students.
Was this a real paper or was it a
Yeah,
mimeograph?
it was on a real printing press.
Oh,
with
wow.
typeset letters. In the beginning, at typeset letters, I think it was converting as we were to photo offset, but it was linotype in the beginning.
I think at Loyola we were still mimeograph. Well, I was 63 and 4, so yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit later than
Yeah,
that.
you're a lot later than that. Come on, I know.
So, but I can remember seeing the boxes of print of the letters and all of that stuff, and people who did that sort of thing, and it was a fairly labor intensive thing, because the newspaper, was a good 20 to 25 minutes off campus. It was one of the excursions that was authorized on Monday to take it up there. We took it up there at 10 o'clock at night and dropped it off. And then we went sometime whenever they called us on Tuesday to come look at it and do Tuesday was a set appointment that we always went. I think that was around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And then Wednesday was whenever they called us that it was ready to be proofed. So we'd go to the office, to the newspaper office, and proof it. It was on the big tables and laid out. You could see the whole newspaper. It was kind of cool.
So was this a campus press?
No,
shop?
this was
a public press.
It was a public newspaper that had
Yeah.
a contract with the college.
There you go. Yeah.
And then Thursday, thankfully, we didn't have to go pick it up. They delivered the finished papers, and they delivered it to the main hall where it used to get there typically around 5 o'clock, and dinner was at 6. So it was in the alcove before the dining room, and because the Wismer Hall was the big dining room, and everybody ate there. It was the one, if you weren't going to eat out of a machine or out of your local stash, that's where you ate. And so they'd put them out in the foyer out there.
Now, for folks just tuning in and wondering
What are we talking
what
about?
the rabbi is talking about, you can go to a museum and try and find a newspaper in there somewhere.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Newspapers are dying. The print papers are definitely dying.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, it was really interesting to see the linotype and more than the linotype, to see the actual printing press, and all of that, the wonderful noises of it. My parents had used. My mother ran a little weekly paper in California, and I can remember using the Verotype and printing out her headlines for her and ads, and she manually laid them out.
Sure.
So much faster on the computer.
There's no comparison.
And it's interesting. I still have a pretty good eye for laying things out flat, even without the guides and the rules, because I did so much of it as a child.
Wow.
That I built those spatial pieces. And here's the transfer of it, right? Now the psychologist looks back and understands a little bit what was going on. That's why I can pack well in spaces and fill up the storage facility reasonably well and get more in it than most.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, you look at the background that you've had in media, you've really had it all. I mean, you did television in Tucson.
Yeah.
You've done radio. You've done newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love it. And it's, to me, it's so important for our general public to be able to interact and to get timely information. Today's world is very different, of course, with the ability to upload a video immediately, to be able to search this and data mine that and verify your stuff a whole lot faster than verification was way back when.
Well, look at what you're doing with the Facebook Live now. I mean, it's just even a few years ago that was not possible.
Right. So, so we've got people, we often have people in Tucson, we often have people in Ohio, we have people in Pennsylvania that I commonly see as people are talked to about the show. But there's also folks in Europe that watch it and interact in a live fashion, because I respond to notes and things like that. So yeah. So if you'd like to use that old technology called a phone and call in and talk to me, instead of just having me read notes on Facebook, then you are welcome to call me at 772-340-1590. Again, that's 772-340-1590. And you can ask this rabbi any question. I may not have the answer, but you're welcome to ask the question.
And by the way, the talk stations in Miami are now not taking calls.
They're not taking calls?
Texts only.
Wow. Wow.
It's like, what?
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking it's an interesting note, and it speaks to the technology, because I was thinking of something when I was getting ready to come into the station. I got one of those wonderful unknown calls. It wasn't listed as spam, but it was listed as unknown, which probably is not a good thing, because today you get caller ID on almost every call. And but I answered it. And it was like, oh, well, this is Amazon, and we're going to confirm your purchase of $1,000 some odd. And, if you recognize this call, then fine, hang up. And if you don't, then call 800, whatever the number was, 555-5555.
Money.
Right. And I can just imagine, if you called that number, they, of course, would get they would verify your Amazon ID and your password and a couple of other key things, maybe your security questions, and you giving your life away on Amazon. And I've had my Amazon hacked once, and Amazon actually did a very good job, a great job of shutting it down quickly. I've had two interesting things happen with Amazon. One was somebody broke in. They didn't buy a lot, but I watch my credit cards closely enough that we noticed things immediately and hopped on. The other one was an even more interesting one, which was stuff came to our house that we had not ordered from an account that I didn't create that had my name on it.
Oh, brother.
And
brother.
And interestingly, when the packages came, I'm savvy enough that I kept the packages. So when I called Amazon, they were thrilled that I had the tracking numbers, and I could give them all of the information. Actually, I took a picture of the shipping label and sent it back to them.
Sure.
And they shut that account down, and they graciously allowed me to keep everything that they had been sent to me. And the thing that we're thinking of, well, the reason that I think, they didn't confirm this, but kind of between the lines I'm reading, was that those were being used so that people could be a quote-unquote verified customer and put reviews on the things. Because if you look carefully through some of the reviews now, one of the things that you'll see is that sometimes people will be verifying, let's say, pink Kool-Aid, and the object you're buying is a $500 television. So there's a lot of this kind of disparity. And the stuff they were sending was not expensive stuff. It was cheap junk. And I don't know what they had it listed as, but what they sent to my house was cheap junk. And Amazon was very, very interested in that one. So, yeah, life is interesting. So anyway, so that phone call. And as I was thinking about that call, this 800 number that they gave, and they repeated it, and they said, if you want to have the number again, push this button. And I was thinking about some of our older folks who use flip phones, and they're not smartphone savvy, and they're not this kind of spoof or phishing savvy, simply because they haven't exposed themselves to it as it was coming on stream. And so you and I, because we get inundated with it every day, we're pretty quick to recognize it. And if anything's the least bit fishy, you double check it. And folks, never use the 800 number that somebody gives you in a phone call. Go either online or on the back of your credit card or somewhere like that where the phone number can be trusted. It's important. And, there's a real value. It's even better if you go onto the website on the World Wide Web, click the button that says contact me, and then they'll tell you the number that's going to call you. And, that way the connection, and you can talk about what's on the screen, and you can verify that each is real.
Yeah, we had an incident at a hotel down in the Miami area, and it was interesting because apparently, they take a credit card, for various deposits, the room.
Yeah, all those miscellaneous charges, like the little refrigerator in your room.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so all of a sudden we got these very strange charges, and our bank called
Mm-hmm.
because
They were strange.
We've never been into a GameStop in our lives, and there were a bunch of those on the card, and they said just get into a branch, we'll cancel.
Yeah.
And so they tracked it down to one of the valets in the garage
Wow.
that apparently had been doing this on
Yeah.
a regular basis.
They'll find the folks. They're very good at that anymore. And it's a hard thing to accept that the computers pay attention on a non-personal level. But like you said, it saw an unusual charge and it saw a rash of them. So I had a similar interesting thing. I mean, it was legitimate. I had switched credit cards that I was using for something on my phone for a number of reasons. And as soon as 3 phone charges came in, zing, I got this text from them. You've not done this before. Is it valid? And
wow.
of course I was able to say it was valid and give the amounts and all of that stuff. So they do check those things, and it's not done to track you. It's done to minimize fraud. And yes, it is available. Like you see on NCIS, they can come back in later.
Yes.
And, when they want it, the information's there.
It's eerie. We were in Dick's Sporting Goods, and I was getting a scorebook for the playoffs. So, okay, in there, let's take a look at some of the shoes and stuff. We just got the email this morning. There is a 40% off
For shoes.
on all shoes. And I'm thinking they were tracking that phone inside the store. Yeah.
Yeah. and it's that good, folks. It's that good anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's funny.
Yeah, I can remember the early days of maps, right? The early maps on the phone, where you were lucky if it got you within a block of where you were. There were times that it would put me in the next city, and it took a while to get all of the data points on the satellite.
Well, the more GPS satellites up there,
the
better it gets.
The more accurate, yeah. Now they can track you to a few feet.
Yeah.
And we wonder why planes stop disappearing in the Bermuda Triangle. There's your clue, folks. It's that we have better satellite and better radar. Right? We can track. They don't get lost. And storms are not unknown.
Do planes really disappear there?
I think they crash in the ocean.
But would that be most likely from the storm, not anything
right.
else?
Think back a couple of years. There was a couple of years ago where Port St. Lucie was reasonable weather. Nothing, it was actually sunshine and quite beautiful. And there was a hurricane not, 10 miles offshore. Well, 10 miles to an airplane is not a big distance. That's a couple of minutes. And if you're a degree or two off your course, that plane could easily be in the storm, and boom, and storms are wicked, and they have tendrils, if you will, that reach out.
Knew flying over Pittsburgh as many years as you did.
Yeah, there were special things that I used to do with students to verify their ability to identify situations. For example, to be able to identify fog at night, not the fog that's on the ground that you can see, but the fog that's 1,000 or 2,000 feet above ground that you fly through. You're flying at night. There's a beautiful sky above you with wonderful stars. There's nice lighted cities underneath you, and then suddenly the world goes, charcoal gray. That's not paying attention to when you lose sight of what's going on one way or another, and you're flying into fog, and you need to be aware of that.
We used to have something called Thule fog in Sacramento, the Inland Empire, if you will, going all the way from the Mexican border up to Northern California. And that just shut down everything.
Yeah. Fog is wicked.
Terrible.
And at night, you can't see it. In the daytime, the
See, I
fog is
never
white.
even thought about that, but you're right. Yeah.
Right. In the daytime, the fog is white, but at night, there's nothing to make it reflect white. It's charcoal gray. And it's real easy to miss charcoal gray, and I mean a deep charcoal gray, against the dark part of the terrain below you. So you need to, there's an old joke in flying. IFR is instrument flying rules, but the other thing is I follow roads or I follow railroads. Right, it's the other meaning for IFR.
IFRR.
Yeah. And why that's important is because streets and highways have lights along them in the houses and in the street lights and all of that. So you can follow that. And if you're a student or a non-instrument rated pilot needs to use those clues so they don't get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, I have a friend who's trying to get it, whatever the full license is, instrument rated.
Yeah, commercial license.
And he's having a tough go with that.
Instrument ratings are not easy, and they're harder now, although they know better where you're at. There were times when I was flying in instruments over the mountains between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, which, we call them the hills, but Demem Mountains. They have lenticular clouds, folks. They've got some incredible winds over them. And there were times that I was flying that on instrument rules and actually off radar, because radar is line of sight. And at the time, they didn't have enough ways to track it. Now they've got the satellites and other things to use to help track you, so you're not as likely to get lost.
When you were flying through canyons, did you have the weird downdrafts?
Oh, yeah. There was
I
one.
never liked those in the helicopter.
I didn't like them in a fixed-wing airplane, thank you.
Well, at least you had some support. Helicopters don't.
Well, yes and no, because if the airflow is going down, so are you.
Oh, I get
right.
it. Yeah.
There was one notable flight, and that was an interesting one. We were, my husband was in the back seat as a passenger, and we were just racking up some miles for one of my students. And at his suggestion, so he and his wife, because he's a licensed pilot, so we can have passengers in while we're having instruction. So the two of them are in the back seat of the airplane, and I and the student are up in the front. And we had gone to Harrisburg for dinner, one of those crazy things that pilots do.
Oh, yeah. I know.
And we're flying back, and we started to hit the up and down drafts over we were at a reasonable altitude, but we started really hitting some really strong up and down drafts, and we actually called into center to get higher so we could get out of some of that. But for a while, until it came back to allow us to climb out of that mess, we were fighting to climb and then fighting not to climb, because when you'd hit the other side of the mountain, it threw you up in the air, and we'd gain 1,000 feet at the blink of an eye. And and you didn't want to go too low, because then you knew the downdraft was going to hit you at the next ridge. Yeah, not fun.
E-ticket ride.
Yeah, it was definitely an e-ticket ride.
Ooh.
And I remember that one well.
Ooh.
I remember lots of cool flights. There were three very notable flights between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh, and that was one of them. And another one was I was part of Civil Air Patrol back then. We'd gone on a reconnaissance exercise, and the weather was just dicey enough that there was carburetor ice actually in my little airplane. I was in my Grumman, and which is now living apparently out in Colorado, according to the airplane registry, because I looked it up. And but this time we were coming back from Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, and I'm coming over. I'm just coming past the mountains, and Latrobe, which is just on the western side of the mountains.
Home of Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, there you go. Just coming to that neck of the woods, and I'm picking up carburetor ice, and the airplane is losing power, and it's not a pretty thing. And I'm saying to center that I am unable to maintain altitude. Please give me a lower altitude. Planning, I just want to change. I want to get up or down, which is what you do with carb ice. You get out of the freezing zone, because it's a critical carb ice forms when the air is just the right temperature as it comes through the carburetor to ice up inside the carburetor. And then
You wouldn't want to go up, though, would you?
if you go up, it's going to be too cold. It's not going to be moist enough, so it won't freeze on. It won't freeze in the carburetor.
I didn't know that.
So upward, either one works. But why go up in the clouds when I knew that I
Right.
could break out of the clouds and go down? So I'm asking for it, but needless to say, they stand by, right? Stand by. Love stand by. And we start losing altitude. And I did something called torching the engine, which is a maneuver that jars it, and sometimes it knocks the ice free, and it did with a loud whoomp. And then we climbed back up to altitude, called back into center, and they said, "You're cleared to go down." I'm like, really? Really? Yeah, that was one of my notable flights. The other one is a good flight.
Oh, God.
I was coming back with Bill, who's now my husband, and it was one of the most glorious, beautiful night skies that I have ever seen in an airplane. We must have been in something that, low wing airplane with probably my Grumman, I guess. And we looked up at the sky, and you could see the Milky Way. It was just glorious, absolutely spectacular sky.
That is cool. So, yeah, crystal clear night there, looking up, huh?
Crystal clear night, and of course over the mountains there's not nearly as much light pollution underneath. The only other time I'd seen such gorgeous skies was at Kitt Peak, outside of Tucson.
Yeah, I'm sure those guys are gone now, or close.
They were definitely having problems keeping them
Light
going.
pollution, you
Yeah.
bet. Yeah.
Light pollution and of course Tucson is just mushroomed, the Oro Valley and all of that area. Yeah, pollution's got to be a whole lot. Although Tucson does at least have dark sky requirements, which means that they don't have the great big lights shining up. Right, all lights have to be capped.
That's very smart, yeah.
So that the light pollution doesn't go up it. And in reality, that's not where you want your light anyway. You really want the light down, because you're trying to light the parking lot or the whatever it is that you're trying to light. So yeah, in Tucson you're not allowed to have uncapped lights, so no lights that shine upward. And they're trying. They are doing what they can to keep it as dark sky as they can. They actually have a dark sky. I don't know if it's a society or a club but it's a group that goes at night and takes photos and things like that.
I think they gave up in Phoenix decades ago.
Well, Phoenix is a whole different. You can see Phoenix from Kitt Peak.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's of course from Mount Lemmon you can see New Mexico clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've never been out to Tucson, Mount Lemmon is an amazing place.
Yeah.
It really is. We call them desert islands. It's 8,000 or more. It's 11,000 feet.
Oh, yeah.
It's way up there.
Yeah.
Now Tucson's not low. Right, Florida's low. We're at essentially zero.
Tucson's 3,500.
Yeah, it's
It's like
Tucson's
El Paso. I mean,
right.
they're high
It's
desert.
high. I don't think it's 3. I think it's 2.
Is it 2?
Yeah, I think it's 2,500, because saguaro, right? Saguaro grow in Tucson.
Yes.
You can't get too high for saguaro. That's why saguaro don't grow in Tombstone, because it am too high.
Okay, yeah.
Saguaro has an altitude limit because it's got to be able to pump water to the top of the plant. And it becomes harder to pump water the higher you go. Yeah.
I didn't know
Right.
that.
So Mount Lemmon is this really high plateau, or not even really a plateau, it's a mountain. It's got a great ski resort on it.
Yep.
It's got wonderful restaurants and a couple of things like that, some hiking trails. Beautiful, beautiful area, and lots of places to stop. It's a 28-mile up ride, and it's just, you can really see the ecosystems change as you change altitude. So
Yes.
right at this altitude, you have this kinds of trees and etc. Yeah.
It's kind of like when you drive north in Florida, and
Yeah, you can watch the
see
ecosystem.
different types of trees, and then you get to Tallahassee and you see these
Yeah.
monstrous trees.
Yeah. You don't see them down here.
No.
Yeah, and deciduous trees, which we have a few of. I mean, there's actually some maple trees on the IRSC campus, at least on the Pruitt campus. I was looking at them like, why are you here? Looking for some of those winged pods, but I don't see them here. We're not going to, of course, have sugar maple. It's not going to produce the maple syrup that you get up north because we don't have the long freezing winters to start the sugar flow in early spring. You have to have multiple nights below freezing and days that are warmer, and that's when the sugar starts to flow in the maple. One of my late brother used to tap maple trees, and I still have one jug of maple syrup from him in my closet. Yeah. I'm going to open it some special time because that won't spoil.
A friend of ours bought a farm up in Maine, and
they've got maple trees.
They're into that too,
yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Maple syrup's amazing. You have to boil 40 gallons of sap to get 1 gallon of syrup. And that's typically the sap from about 4 trees.
Wow.
But
really?
Think of it. A gallon of syrup is a lot of syrup. Think of a gallon of milk, right? That's a huge amount of syrup. Most people buy syrup in 4 or 8 ounces.
Right.
So, it would last you a good long time, and you want a bottle of those. And the bottle that I have for my brother's a big one. So, might break that down and reseal it into new bottles. But, of course, it won't be as good as the ones that he capped and bottled when it was hot.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that idea. So, plant sale?
Plant sale is this weekend, Sunday and Monday from 1 to 5. And the congregation, it's in our sanctuary. We convert the sanctuary over, take the chairs out, and put tables in. And as just mentioned, it's Sunday from 1 to 5, live radio, and Monday from 1 to 5 at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. That's the front building when you come in off of University, and we're right next to the elevators.
And remember, you do not have to fight the crowds of spring training for this plant sale.
That's true. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Fortunately, yeah. So we won't have that mess, but you are welcome to come see the beautiful plants that we've been growing. I've got a couple of Swiss cheese plants, and I'm going to actually show cuttings. On Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'm going to do a cutting and planting demonstration for about a half hour. We'll broadcast it, but I'm going to do that as well, so you can come and see actually how to take cuttings. And I'm going to be taking some cuttings from the Swiss cheese. I've got a big Swiss cheese plant, and I'm going to take some cuttings from it, and I will probably also show how to take cuttings from a ZZ plant.
A who?
A ZZ plant. Zanzibar.
ZZ Top?
ZZ plant.
ZZ plant.
Yeah.
Oh.
So those things, and I'll talk in general about some other things about taking care of plants. So an educational moment at 3 o'clock, and you can buy all kinds of different plants. And
so we can find you on Facebook televising that?
Yeah, televising that on Sunday at 3. So, and also obviously you can be there live, and you can actually buy one of the cuttings that I take and put in a pot at that point if you want to. And since they won't be rooted, you'll be able to get a good deal on them. Mm-hmm. I know they will root. I've had very, very good luck with that plant. It's doing incredibly well. We've also got some Hawaiian Pothos that I will also be doing that with. Hawaiian Pothos are the giant big leaves. The plants that I have small leaves, but if you put them on your palm tree or something like that, they will grow up and have these huge, huge leaves. Yeah, we're talking like a good foot across, maybe even a little bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Giant pothos.
I'm trying to think back to Hawaii. Yeah, I think I've seen.
Yeah, and they're variegated. This one's a yellow and green, so it's very, very pretty.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
Yeah, some of those. I have a couple. I think I have a couple of sensitive plants that I'm bringing. Those are fun, especially for kids and for the kid in you. You touch them and the plant goes ee and closes up.
Okay.
So I've got
kind of like a snapdragon type thing.
It's just that the whole leaves just go chink and close. I should have brought one in so you could see it, but it'll sit here and it'll be wide open and collecting the sun and happy. And you touch it and it goes and it folds up completely.
Wow. Okay.
So it's an interesting little plant. There aren't too many of them. It's called a sensitive plant. And they're a little bit of fun to grow. They got a cute little pink flower on them. Yeah. So yeah, some different interesting plants that we'll have. I've got some some local native ground orchids. And my ground orchid in my front is got all kinds of flowers on it. I don't know if any of the ones that we've got potted have flowered yet. But
we have found that some neighborhood bunnies seem to like our plants in the front yard.
Neighborhood bunnies like a lot of things.
Oh,
and so do squirrels. I've been enjoying watching the squirrels. We have banana trees, and next to it we have a rain tree. And the rain tree is very tall and reaches over the roof of the house. It's probably the tallest trees, one of the tallest trees on our property, but the pines are taller. But they're in the back and they're not near the house. So the bunnies will go into the banana tree and they'll pick out that fiber that's in the between the fronds of the banana tree.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they'll mine those. We can watch them digging, and they'll take that, and you've got this big. They look like they've got a giant beard, and they'll come down the banana tree, go back up the rain tree, jump over to the roof, and go somewhere in the back. The squirrels are fun to watch. They also like the hibiscus flowers.
Oh yeah,
they'll grab those.
We have some mini ski jumps off our roof to the hibiscus plant, trying to get the flowers at the top of the plant.
Ah.
And those crazy squirrels will jump from the roof to try and grab it on the way
and
down.
They're very good at aiming.
They are.
They do something called a headlock, which is when they're in motion, they can lock their eyes on their target. And then they will either put their arms out to create a little parachute out of their bodies because they're so loose with skin, or they'll curl up tight to speed up or to allow themselves to rotate more easily and things like that. And then just before they land, they put their feet down. And that's why squirrels can survive jumping off your roof and dive bombing your hibiscus.
So welcome to Animal Planet.
Yeah, there you go. A little bit about this, a little bit about that. It's as good a time as any. If you've got a question, we've got a few more minutes here on the show. Give me a call at 772-340-1590. Obviously, we've gone far afield today, not discussing at all what a topic that I had had planned for today, but that happens, and it's quite okay. So if there's anything you'd like to ask this rabbi, please feel free to call in. It has been far afield. So different from last week's discussion on Jonah.
That's right.
And the story. So we're about to come up to Purim. We're about a month from Purim because this is the the 25th of Adar today, and tomorrow will be the
Mm-hmm. Yes, 25th.
No, it's
Today.
the 25th of February, but it is the 23rd of Adar.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, I'm having one of those moments. No, the 24th right now, and tonight will be the 25th of Adar. It's the Hebrew month. I'm
Gotcha.
losing my calendar here for a minute, but that's okay.
Gotcha.
There's a lunar calendar that's alongside the Gregorian sun calendar that we operate on, the common calendar. And the Jewish lunar calendar is in Adar 1, and we'll have Adar 2 this year. So Purim, when we have a leap year, which we do Jewishly, not on the Gregorian calendar, but Jewishly we have a leap year this year. So we have an extra month. We have 13 months this year. I always get a kick. That brings to an interesting point. So sometimes Jews will say, Happy Jewish New Year. I wish you 365 days of this or that. And it's like the Jewish year is never 365 days. Okay. It's 350 some days. And then other months it's 380 some days. But it's never 365 days or 66. Because when we have a leap year, you can't do just a day. You have to do a whole lunar cycle. If it's a lunar-based calendar, you have to add a
yeah,
whole
well,
lunar cycle.
That
So
makes sense.
it does make sense. It makes
Yeah, sure.
complete sense.
Yeah.
And why did they do it? Because the sun controls the crops. Not that the sun controls them, right? That's a good point. That's how superstitions get started. The sun doesn't control it. The Earth's position in orbit and its tilt toward the sun control the cycle of the plants. Plants are amazing. They know gravitational pull. That's how they know to put roots down and leaves up, because that's the inborn gravitational sensing within a plant. We think of plants as not having a whole lot of sense, but they do. They can tell gravity. They always know to put roots toward the pull and leaves away from it toward the sun, because that's what gives them photosynthesis, and then they can grow well.
Now it's getting deep.
There
folks.
you go.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, the other part that I was thinking about was Mercury. All right, Mercury retrograde and the planets. Planet means wanderer in Greek, and because they saw that most of the stars had circular paths across the sky according to the seasons, but the planets appeared to go retrograde or go backwards part of the year because of the position in and around the sun. So they didn't stay in their place in the constellations. And so they were wanderers. That's how they knew there were planets. People have known there were planets since antiquity, because we could see a lot more stars way back when. Who knows how many planets they could actually see.
Well, the shepherds allegedly.
Yeah, shepherds watching their fields at night, because they would go out particularly in lambing time, because if a mother is getting in trouble with babies, they've got to be there to help. So they're out with their flocks at springtime and summer, so that they can help with any babies that are coming along, and just to also watch and make sure that a couple of stray males don't get in and kill themselves and others while they're arguing over which young lady is most attractive. I'm trying to be, PG over here. and so, they saw those things in the stars, and it's not that change in direction, because the planet isn't changing direction. It's our perspective on the planet that's changing. It's either far away or close, and depends on where it is in the orbit compared to us, is how it's going to be.
So we've had climate change since day one.
We've always had climate change.
Certainly.
The challenge now is that we're exacerbating it, and we're not doing good things. We're not studying it well enough and doing things to help keep it in a healthy place. And so we are seeing some really strange things. We're also none of those things are easy. Climate change is also affected when the worst hurricane that ever came across Florida came across and caused Lake Okeechobee to do all kinds of surge, and then crashed into Galveston, causing that horrible devastation.
1929.
There wasn't Port St. Lucie. Right, it was Bush Mills, I think, or whatever the early name for the little tiny settlement that was here. If that same hurricane came across now, the number of houses and the people it would affect, vastly different. So there's all kinds of things that are going on, and if you look at how houses are built, of course, we're building houses above the floodplain, right? So they artificially raise the house some number of feet, and you've got these interesting little ravines. All of that's changing things too. Phoenix has definitely become hotter over the years because of all the concrete and asphalt, and probably Port St. Lucie is changing the local temperature just by virtue of the amount of asphalt, concrete, and housetops. And it does make a difference if you're going to be putting in a Key West metal roof or an old style the half pipe kind of roofing or regular shingles. They reflect heat differently. They absorb heat differently. So it's going to change the pattern. And what Phoenix is doing now is starting some rooftop gardens to bring down the temperature of the city. And that will be, I think, a really good idea. The idea that
That's
you
a
can.
great idea.
It is a wonderful idea. You know, you have to take care of drainage, especially here where we get a ton of rain, and do it well. But you can grow something on your roof that could feed you. And, on the other hand, when the hurricane comes through, you lose your crop probably. But, yeah, different things. But those are things that help change. And we know that in places like Phoenix, really important. Putting plants inside cities, putting plants inside our homes, very important. A challenge in my house, because I've got a cat who looks at every plant as a play toy. Not necessarily a garden, but a play toy. And if he spots one, my husband was telling me that the other day, I wasn't home, but he was holding the cat in his lap. And the cat actually saw the plant in the kitchen and took this flying leap from his lap to where I had put something in water short term so that I could then take it out on the patio and root it.
So the cat hasn't tried one of your cacti in the backyard?
The cat's not allowed out.
Oh, okay.
It's a house cat.
There you go.
It's safer for everybody if the cat's indoors.
Mm-hmm.
Safer for the cat, and it's safer for the wildlife. Yeah, they don't need to mix. He can guard the house, and he does an amazing job of that.
Guard cat?
Yeah, the guard cat. Well, he clearly goes after every plant that tries to make it into the house. Although he left when I pulled the orchids in for the cold weather, so I did pull them into my house.
But the cat would probably feel that too.
What, the cold weather?
Yeah.
In the house?
Well, a lot of the barometric changes.
Oh, yeah, he does feel the barometric. You can see the barometric change in all the animals if you pay attention. We feel it too.
Sure.
People react to that. People react to all kinds of different things in weather and stuff.
Yeah.
That's not new. And, but yeah, he left the orchids alone, which is surprising. Well, I should say some of them we took into a room that he didn't have access to. And we especially didn't give him access to it because the orchids were in it. But I had my Cattleya orchid sitting on a table, not in his normal line of sight, but he left it alone. It was in the house for a good probably 2 weeks during that cold snap. It rewarded me with 3 flowers, 3 beautiful deep purple flowers. So, yeah. So he leaves some things alone, but on the other hand, the little sprig of privet, he did not leave alone. He spilled the water all over the counter. Love your animals. And it's not his fault. It looks like a wonderful play toy, and he spotted it. And, yeah, so it got moved into the back room as well. Yeah. And then it got moved out to the patio. So my patio is where most of my plants are, but yeah. I go and sit out there and spend time with them. Plants are important. They give us oxygen. They can take in that garbage that both we and our cars put out, and they can help change that back into oxygen in their photosynthesis process. So we are definitely connected. There was a great meme one day that I saw on the internet. It was like, the plants are raising us to feed them because we give them carbon dioxide.
Yep.
And then when we die, we fertilize them. So, we're being farmed.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
It's all perspective. Yeah. We have a symbiotic relationship with our plants, folks. That means that we both need each other. And we do. The plants need animals working through the ecosystem. And, that includes the squirrels, the rabbits,
the humans.
The humans, yeah, hopefully less impactful. But the coyotes, the foxes, the bobcats, all those other wonderful things that live in our land. The alligators, not so much the feral pigs or the buffalo toads, but those are wonderful gifts from humans into our ecosystem.
The javelinas.
Javelina have been there. I don't know that they are mean. They can be very mean. You don't want to cross them. You don't want to challenge them.
No, you don't.
And if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone for the most part. Don't stand between them and their food. That's considered a challenge. And we are small compared to an adult javelina. Adult javelina weighs in pretty heavy. And they've got those wonderful tusks, and they'll use them.
We had a javelina attack one of our news cars at KVOA in Tucson, and it huge dents in the side.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
they
yeah.
saw the reflection in the
Yeah.
vehicle. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. I can remember walking. We were going to a concert at one of the care facilities, and there was a herd of them, and they're big and they're huge. And
Oh,
we just
yeah.
stood there and let them go through. And we didn't challenge them, and obviously we weren't sparkly enough to get their attention. They looked at us, but they kept going. So, which was fine. Because I was about to run for my car if I had to and jump on it.
Well, it's a pretty safe bet because
Yeah.
they'll attack you. It's whoa.
Yeah, if they feel challenged or threatened, they will. And it's not hard. They don't seem to have a lot of prefrontal cortex to make judgments with. They make a very quick decision, and it's not always in humans' best interest.
Kind of like a guy.
I wasn't going to go there. Do not put those words in my mouth. So we have definitely kind of wandered all over the field, and we'll get probably back to more typical comments. But we do have the plant sale. Come and hear some of these stories live, and come watch how to do cuttings and plantings for great plants. And we'll set that up, and you'll see some of it. On Sunday from 1 to 5, the cutting demonstration at 3. And then the plant sale continues Monday from 1 to 5 at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. And this has been Rabbi Shafir Loeb. I hear the music coming on softly in the background telling me that there's one more minute, right?
Yep. When's the services?
Services are Friday night at 7:30, and also those are at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. We also Zoom them live onto Facebook, and you're welcome to join us there as well.
All right. Well, have a good week.
You too. This is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, and this has been Ask a Rabbi.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL Global, WPSL, Port St. Lucie, worldwide on TuneIn.